Hey guys, it's Maymay and welcome to another heart scripture journey week. And this week we're going back to the book of James. Now you remember we learned James 1, 2 through 4 earlier in the year. And now we're going to go back to James and we're going to go to chapter 1 and we're going to do verse 22. I want to read this. It's actually 22 and 23. But be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man who looks intently at his natural face in the mirror. And I'm going to continue reading for you. For he looks at himself and goes away and at once forgets what he was like. But the one who looks into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and perseveres, being no hearer who forgets, but a doer who acts, he will be blessed in his doing. Now, the verse I'm going to memorize this week is 22 and 23, but it's important that we read all the way down on this one. And the reason being is this. So I was thinking about, wow, we've learned a lot of scripture so far this year. We've really put a lot into our heart. But if we're only hearing the scriptures that we're learning and we're not putting them into action, then what are we really learning? Does that make sense? We're not learning to do anything. We're just putting the scripture in our heart. You have to think about, first off, I want to make this clear because I think some people may confuse this. A lot of times they do. Scripture says that faith without works is dead, but it also tells us that we can't earn our way to heaven, or, there's no way for us to work our way to heaven. But if we want to be a faithful person, or when we receive our faith and when we are strong in our faith, we want to work. We want to do things for the Lord. Well, when we hear the scriptures, when we put the scriptures into our heart, we should want to keep the scriptures or obey his commands. And I think we've learned a lot. We have a lot of meat that we've learned throughout this first part of the year. I just want to make sure we're putting it into practice. Are we reminding ourselves there's a time for everything? Are we reminding ourselves that Jesus is the only way to heaven? There's no other way. Are we reminding ourselves to count it all joy? Are we doing those things? Are we counting it all joy? These are all things we've learned. And I think it'd be fun if this week, if you went back and looked through the scriptures, because I know even though you're studying the scriptures every week or learning the scriptures, sometimes you can forget which ones you have learned until it's time to call one up. So go back this week and look at the scriptures and see if there's something in there you need to be a doer of and not merely a hearer of. It's very important that we also do what we know to do, right? If you know something should be done, it's important that you do it. So James chapter 1, 22 and 23, I'm going to write that on my card. Now, if you're good at memorization, I would challenge you to memorize all the way down to 25, but you guys know I struggle, so I'm going to go 22 and 23. We may come back and do the others another time, or I may, but if you can memorize that whole section, go for it. I think that would be amazing. All right, so I'm putting this into my memory decks or Versadex, and I will put that into my heart. Now, for this week's cards, remember last week I started to work on the cards. Now this week I finished them, so you'll get to see what the second card looks like. And I just want to thank you guys for being patient with me as I've been traveling. So if we've had any issues with videos this week, that's why, because I've been out of the country actually. And I will be back in the office next week, and that I'm excited to get started again on videos for you guys. But in the meantime, go back and look at the scriptures you have. Check and see if you're being a doer as well. It's important that we do that, kind of guard our hearts and make sure we're doing what we should be doing. And don't be just a hearer, but actually be a doer. Thanks so much. I hope you enjoy the card making, and I'll see you again next week. So for my cards this week, you might remember last week that I cut these pieces down to 4 by 5 1/4, and I punched the flower out that I used on the cards last week, and I'm going to get 2 for 1 out of this project. I need to stamp on here, but I want to show you something else I did. I went ahead and cut 12 pieces of cardstock, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, because I want it to be the whole front of a card. And let me tell you what I did. You're going to think I'm crazy, but this is exactly what happened. So I have this 6 by 6 paper pad, and I have had it like beside me on my desk, and I seem to not be able to move past this paper pad. Every time I want to grab something, I grab this one. Well, I have a lot of paper I want to use, but I keep leaning to this one. So I decided I was going to pull my papers for this card from here and use up this paper pad, if that makes sense. I left myself very few sheets in here. I still have a few if I want to pull from them, but sometimes to get out of my comfort zone, I'll try to use up a paper pack to do that. And that's exactly what I did. So I just want to tell you where that paper came from. And we need to stamp these little guys. So I'm going to put one of these guys in. And when I punched this out, I made sure that I went all the way down with the punch on every one of them to the same spot. It might not be in the same center, but I went all the way down. In other words, I took the cardstock and I stuck it all the way in. Let me do it on this end. All the way in till it stopped. And that way I know that my flower is at the same height, but it may not be the same exact distance here from side to side. But I want to stamp in here, and I'm going to use my stamp set called Jesus, the names of Jesus again. And I think I'm going to use this bold print word Jesus right here. And I think underneath it, I'm going to use cares for you. I think that'll be pretty on this card. So Jesus cares for you is going to go underneath. And that's going to get stamped on all the cards. I need to look over and make sure I have it straight. I don't feel like it's straight. And it may not be perfect, but I'm not going to worry about that. Good deal. All right, and this is what I'm going to use. Let me see what color. I think I'm going to use black because the colors that I used in the paper are so varied. I want to make sure that whatever ink I use matches every one. So I'm just going to use black, and that way I know I'll be safe. So some VersaFine Onyx Black. Ink that up and stamp it down. Give that a good press. Oh yeah, I like that. And then I'm going to go to the next one. So you can see here I've got them all stamped. Now I'm going to mount them directly onto these pieces. And I'll show you, I'm just going to use some art glitter glue. And I'm going to put a little bit in between the flowers, the petals, to make sure they stick down. You could lift this up with foam tape if you wanted to, but those little petals, those little between the flower pieces are kind of dainty, and I'm afraid that wouldn't do well in mailing. Now this gets stuck down like so. Get those to stick down as good as I can. So then we have a flower in the middle, and then we have the sentiment, and each one's going to look different because each one's going to have a different paper in the background. Now I'm just going to take all of my card fronts that I made and glue them down to my card bases. So one last thing to this card, and I'm going to call it done, and that is a little bling in the middle of that flower. I love these big old blings. They really go a long way, but I really think that flower needs a little sparkle. Super cute. And you'll get to see all of them as I flip through. So there you go, all 12 cards for this week, all done using product from last time. all using this sheet. I think that is super cool. I love how these turned out. And it was fun to kind of take one card and make two out of the process. Super cool. Hey, thanks so much for joining me on this journey. If you would like to receive one of these cards that I make, send an email to the following email address. It is Maymay heart cards@gmail.com, and our sweet administrator Sue will randomly draw 12 names every week, and I send a card to those 12 names. And if you'd like to know more about our heart journey, head over to Hide His Word in My Heart Facebook group. That's where we do our Bible studies and our prayer requests and all different kinds of things. There are challenges, there are just all kinds of stuff that goes on over there, and I'd love for you to head over there and get involved. Hey, thanks so much. I hope you have a blessed Sunday, and I'll talk to you again next time. Bye-bye.